it that you are always so ready for this?
Because this is what I do for a living. I'm always ready. Oftentimes, like we'll wake up when we're drinking coffee, Laurel and I, and suddenly I'm like, why I have to film, so I'll just start filming while she's just hanging out. This is what we do.
That's so cool.
I know, right? But it took time. It took time. I was always, and I still get anxiety. We talked about that last time. Like I still, whether I'm shooting, just once you start rolling that camera, I've had times where I'm actually literally just talking in front of the camera and I start to kind of like panic and I don't even know why. Like I couldn't even tell you why.
Okay, I get that. I totally understand that. That's when you put me down here, and this is when the panic starts.
Yeah.
And I'm here every day.
Well, if you take the camera away,
it's no
big deal.
Then it's
just talking or shooting.
Then it's just adrenaline nerves from being on the firing line,
which is good for you.
But it is very, very, very good. Awful and good.
Well, speaking of awful and good, we were talking a little bit, and I'm glad we kind of started rolling the footage on this, because this is so important, is this idea of taking advice when you're wanting, so when you're looking for a gun, taking advice, or
when you're going to the range, taking advice too. How do you pick the people you trust, and who do you trust to give you the correct advice that you will need that'll actually help you? That's pretty smart.
Now, let me ask you this. You worked in gun sales for a long time.
No. No, I have.
All right, for at least 7-8 years. You've been in gun sales for at least 7-8 years. With that, how often have you heard somebody say something like, well, my cousin or my neighbor, or it says this is the thing that I need to get, and what they're actually saying doesn't even exist, or it's not real, or they're saying something it's in your head, you're like, that is the worst idea I've ever heard, and that's terrible advice. How often do you get that?
About every moment that the shop exists and is open and there's a customer in the shop, there will be someone saying something that makes everyone turn their heads and say, didn't sound,
that's not quite
did
right.
I hear that correctly? And you really, really want to step in and help. And being that we are on the sales side of the counter, or sometimes on the buying side of the counter, you can step in and help. It's harder when you're not dressed like an employee and you're on the customer side of the counter to step in and give advice, because usually they're with somebody that they trust, that they would think has their best interests at heart.
Well, and that's the best part about it, is because, something I'd mentioned, but I think this is so valid, and I wish people, when they're seeking advice for a firearm specific, because it takes a lot of responsibility to own a firearm. And when you're seeking advice for something that takes a lot of responsibility like that, and can have dire consequences if not used properly, this idea that we want to seek people's advice, and I kind of gave the example that, like my mom, when she gives me advice, I ask her advice and she gives it to me. If I don't take it, she says, well, Mark, why do you even ask? If you're not going to take my advice, why do you ask? And I say, well, it's because she has my best interest at heart. I want her advice. I just won't always take her advice.
What credentials and expertise in this field does she have to be giving you this advice? Now, not to lessen anyone's personal experiences, but when you are asking for help, not only should you seek from people who have your best advice at heart, but you should ask them, all right, well, who is your go-to expert in the field? Where do you go to get the knowledge that you need? And if maybe they don't have the answers, maybe they can help you find the answers, or they know someone else that can point you in the right direction to get you there.
Well, and everybody seems to be an expert lately, because we're experts on everything. Everybody's, I read an article, or have you seen the data, or everybody's an expert on everything in the world. And they just know for sure. And even the people that I've given advice to on gun, like they say, well, what do you recommend? And I say, well, here's what I recommend. It always comes back with, well, my roommate said, or my brother said, and it's usually finished with something about a Glock. or
you have more options.
There are more
Trust
options.
me, you have way more options.
But, or like the one, tell me what you said about the revolver, about the 38 special that you heard this advice.
Okay, so just last night, my dad calls me and he's like, oh good, I got you when you're not busy. I want to run something by you. I was talking with one of your relatives and he said that he got a 38 Magnum and it'll shoot the high-powered Magnum 38 rounds and it'll shoot the 38 special. And I looked it up. I couldn't find anything anywhere. So then he calls me after he did his own research and he calls me to verify, because if I didn't know, I would know. If
you had not heard of a 38 Magnum.
Well, then I'd know who to ask.
Right.
I would have at my fingertips the knowledge and the expertise. There are people I could call and I could say, hey, what is this? And have you ever heard of this before? So yeah, I was able to tell my dad that no, our relatives were not correct, and the nephew and uncle in question do not have the expertise in this particular field. There isn't at this time a 38 Magnum. There is at this time a 38 Special Plus P and a 38 Special Plus P Plus, both which will have, probably what he was looking for.
And I think the sad thing about this scenario is the advice that your uncle's getting from your nephew, which is his son, I assume.
Yep.
Is that he doesn't want a 357 Magnum because he just needs a 38 Special, because the 38 Special will shoot a 38 Magnum is the advice he's running with. And those aren't even real things. But he's out, the sad part is he's literally out seeking a 38 Special revolver, thinking he can achieve these things because he took advice from somebody who does have his best interest
truly has his best interests at heart, and the interest and well-being of the rest of his family too. And for that, I am so deeply appreciative, and I adore people that are looking out for other people's best interests.
Just don't always take the advice. Seek the advice.
Seek the advice.
But don't always take it.
But temper it with advice from others who do have expertise.
Follow up. Google
in the
it.
field. Yes.
Ask questions. Go to the gun store.
And so
say,
and
do you have a 38 Magnum?
Because
and then they can then set you straight on the existence of such a cartridge.
Exactly.
Right?
Because my dad had this conversation. Now there is a little more knowledge out there. My dad knows for sure that there is no such thing as a 38 Magnum at this time.
Well, and in the end, it's more about just this idea that, kind of go back to what we started, is that there's a lot of responsibility needed to manage a firearm. So don't just, especially if somebody says, well, the only thing you want is this one thing. That's the worst advice. Regardless of what that one thing is, that's the worst advice I ever heard. Because otherwise what they're saying is, what I believe is best for me is best for everybody.
That's like telling somebody the only thing you ever want to eat for the rest of your life is macaroni and cheese.
And that's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Nothing else. No
Don't
more.
even try anything.
Yeah,
else.
Steak, straight out, filet mignon, sushi, the wild, weird, and wonderful stuff of the world. Don't even try.
Don't even mess with it.
Macaroni and cheese for the rest of your life.
And that's the thing is, coming like here, for example, you always have neat guns that maybe haven't been made for 20 years or, and every time I walk in the door, I always see something. I've come into a gun store, not just this one, but gun stores around the world, hundreds and hundreds of times. And I always see something I've never heard of. There's just such a wealth of firearms out there that seek the advice from the people who have your best interest at heart, but be prepared not to take their advice and talk to experts.
Yes.
And try them out. Shoot guns for yourself.
Definitely.
Definitely try it out.